Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Totalbiscuit. A little bit of Star Wars The Old Republic PvP for you. Now this is on one of the 3 war zones available currently in the game, and this is the Voidstar. The Voidstar is an objective-based attack-defense mode. If you want a comparison to WoW, which I will continue to make because it makes sense to do so, then this is most similar to the Strand of the Ancients battleground. However, you do not have siege weapons. You do not have siege weapons or anything of the sort as it happens. You have to set charges on the doors in order to access the next area. Once you do so, the defender's spawn will be set backwards, and you will fight over the next area, then the next. The point is to download the data core. Now, you must do this faster than your opponent, because there are 2 rounds to this. As far as I can tell, the Republic always starts on the attack, and then the Empire will attempt to attack as well. The point simply being that you have to try and do it faster than your opponent. So if the Republic is able to download the data core in the first round, that is going to set the time that the Imperials have to beat in the second round. Now, this particular gameplay is at a fairly low level. I believe I am either level 12 or 13, I can't recall. It is a gameplay after I was able to get a hold of the Electro Dart, which is ridiculously good. It's my first hard disable, and you can disable the target for 4 seconds. It was the biggest problem I was having before I got this ability, was that Jedi could lock me down in melee and just kick the crap out of me. Hell, Imperial agents could as well. It's very, very unpleasant. I think Jedi Shadows were the guys that I were having the biggest problem with, because they would get into melee, they would stealth in, and they would do huge damage, and there's really not an awful lot I could do about it. Not so pleasant. Thankfully, now I've got Electro Dart. If they try and do that, I can dart them, I can get to a reasonable range, and then I can unload on them as well, and that tends to work fairly well. The Bounty Hunter is pretty good in close range, especially if you go power tech, and especially if you also decide to put a lot of points into the Pyro tree. But at the moment, I don't really have a lot of points to invest because I'm only fairly low level, so talents don't really make a huge difference. Alright, so we're defending both doors, so the best thing you can do here is to drop down to the center and respond to the area where the most people are going. Obviously, you have to try and spread your forces out, which in a pub game can be fairly difficult because they don't tend to pay attention to what's actually going on. These guys, however, do seem to know what they're doing, which is good. Right, now that's a Jedi Shadow. That's someone I was talking about there. They can be an absolute pain in the ass. I do have a stun dart available. There we go. There's the stun. And while he's stunned, I could also unload a rail shot, which is what I should have done there. That would have definitely made a lot of sense. It would have done a lot of damage to him, and rail shots can work when the target has been either dotted or disabled in some respect. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to do that. I'm just trying to get used to the Electro Dart, and I didn't engage there well at all. So down I go. Thankfully, the doors have not been blown just yet, and we seem to be okay. So holding down both of these doors generally involves you trying to get your opponents into a choke point, into kind of a killing ground that you can rain down AoE on them. If you've got a few bounty hunters on your team, then you do have access to some fairly powerful AoE effects. Death from above being a prime example, as well as the explosive dart that locks onto an opponent and then will detonate after a few seconds. There's a rail shot going off there. Lots of damage here, and we shouldn't have a problem clearing him out without too much of an issue. Okay, this looks like the kind of area where an AoE could be useful. Now, you do have a couple of AoE options. You've got Flamethrower, and of course, you do have Death from Above, as well as the Explosive Dart. So getting in close, if you're feeling getting in close, if you're okay with that, then hitting multiple enemies with a Flamethrower does a huge amount of damage. Absolutely fantastic ability. Very, very powerful indeed. As you could, well, at least you could have seen if anyone was actually around there. But we've got this door locked down. Of course, the risk is that you all end up at one door and then they charge the other. So it's always best after you've defended one door to move the vast majority of your guys back into the center so that they can move to respond quickly to the other door. The worst thing to happen is that you get caught out of position and someone is able to lock a charge on the door. You do only have 20 seconds to disarm it, and that disarm can be interrupted. The disarm, thankfully, only takes a few seconds to actually happen, but still, not so nice. Now, Guardian's trying to go for me, but Guardian doesn't really have a lot of DPS at this point, so I should be able to deal with him without too much of a problem. Now, as a bounty hunter, Death from Above can basically deny the door for a few seconds because it rains down AoE and there's no way you can place a charge while you're being interrupted by damage. As it stands, I was able to hit a couple of targets there, as I said, lure them into an AoE killing ground, especially if they've got a lot of melee guys. If their team is very Jedi heavy, then the chances are there's going to be a lot of guys in melee, and that's perfect for you. That's what you need. You've got a lot of people just waving their little lightsabers around, blissfully unaware of the fact that you're about to rain down rockets on their head. extremely effective, and also with a large clumped up selection of Jedi, you can utilize the flamethrower at close range, like that, for instance, which, as you can see, does a huge amount of damage, and I was also able to, once again, interrupt yet another bomb placement there as well. Very, very effective. Clumped up Jedi, very, very vulnerable to pretty much any AoE you can imagine. If you're up against a trooper-heavy team that also has some smugglers in it, then you're going to have more problems. But you can still take on those players if you so desire. In fact, it's a good idea to try and pick them off. Never ignore the ranged snipers. You got troopers off to the side, you got smugglers off to the side as well, doing a lot of damage from a distance and picking off your guys one by one. Someone has to deal with those. You're not necessarily the most effective person to do that. A Sith Marauder is a better choice, in my opinion. A Sith Assassin is a perfect choice. Sneak up and then stabby. However, you can't always rely on the players making the best choices, particularly in low-level PvP. So just pick your targets and consider what you want to do. If there's a large group of clumped-up targets, then unleash every AoE that you've got. Otherwise, focus on the snipers at the back, because you've got the range to deal with that, and just let the Jedi and the Sith duke it out in the center. Kind of a pointless waving of the lightsaber fest anyway. Okay, let's get some more AoE on there. So, able to hit 2 targets. Not ideal. Could have probably done better with that one. But whatever the case, what's happening at the moment is the enemy team is making the mistake of not picking off the main damage dealers. Like, they're focusing on the Juggernauts, which is always a terrible idea. They're the tanky guys. What they want to be doing is trying to focus on people like me. Now, that's a Guardian. I can take a Guardian on, if need be. The problem is that they have that speed, which means you can't actually catch them. But it can certainly do some damage and get him out of the fight for a while. This defense is holding very, very nicely indeed, so I'm not too worried. There are quite a few Jedi around here, but we can certainly incinerate that Jedi without too much of a problem. I believe that's Jedi Shadow there, with the double-bladed. Double-bladed lightsabers, I'm pretty sure, are only used by Jedi Shadows, as far as I'm aware, as well as Sith Assassins. So, I must assume that that is the case. A little bit of damage here. Nice close range, you can do it. There's not really too much of a problem with that, unless you're going up against really, really good Jedi. That was a terrible AoE. God, I'm embarrassed to have even performed that. Generally speaking, if you're going up close with, say, a Jedi Shadow, you should probably lose. Or even a more damaged spec Jedi Guardian, which is, of course, possible. Alright, we're just going to interrupt there, and that is a wonderful stack of Jedi we can set on fire. Perfect. And we can also stop that bomb being placed once again. Always look for opportunities. If you've got a couple of Jedi sitting on top of each other, that area where the bombs are is absolutely perfect for dealing massive damage to a clumped up selection of enemy players, and the flamethrower is good for that. Don't mistake the flamethrower for being something just to clear out mobs. It really, really is not. Aside from Jedi, at low levels, these guys are not going to move very fast. They can't get out of that AoE as fast as they would like. And honestly, I even try using this for single target damage, because in close range it seems to work. The amount of damage it does seems like it's actually worth using the flamethrower against a single target if you can keep it on them for all the ticks. If you can't, then it's not so useful at all, as you might imagine. But if you can, then expect a lot of damage, and then you can follow up with a flame burst and even a rail shot as well to do loads more. In close range, as the Bounty Hunter, you do have options. Things like Rocket Punch and Flame Burst in particular, if you've gone down the right route. If you've gone Power Tech, then you get Flame Burst. So, Flame Burst you can use over and over again, except obviously it has heat requirements. So if you need a lot of close range damage, and you need to be able to sustain it for a short period of time in PvP, you can do that. Now there's some AoE, ladies and gentlemen. Oh yes. Wonderful Force Lightning coming down, as well as the Death from Above ability, and that cleans that out as well. You'll see that we're holding onto this really, really well, and this is about to go off. I believe I actually have an unbeatable streak right now, if I recall correctly. You ain't getting through there in a hurry, I'm afraid. And that is an example of nicely executed defense right there. It's really not all that complicated, honestly. It's just a case of stay in the center and respond appropriately. Do not over-respond. I think the worst thing you can do is to over-respond. Now, you can't necessarily rely on your team doing the right thing in a pug, which is unfortunate. Do try and communicate with them a little bit. Like, remind them about stuff like class buffs, because a lot of them forget. So that's a really useful thing to have. If you have all of the class buffs on you, then you're going to be significantly more potent. If you don't, then you're going to be a bit squishier and do less damage. So remind people to do that. Alright. Okay, so now we have to cap it. So, best thing I think you can do at the start is to try and force them all in one direction. So, if you just, pick a target and then go for it. That means you can catch some of them out of position, because if they're not such a smart team, then some of them will have dedicated themselves to the other side. Like, all the way to the other side instead of standing in the center ready to respond. So you can overwhelm them with numbers. If you can get a good attack on that, then you can place the charge and then get an easy win through that. And this is wonderful as well. Look for opportunities whereby one of your guys goes to place a charge, and then you could throw down an AoE on all of the noobs that decide to jump on that guy. That's a lot of damage we got there initially, and this guy's been perma-stunned. There's a rocket punch to follow it up and a flame burst, and now I can go for the placement. Now, multiple people really should go for the placement here, because, of course, if a single target damage is able to interrupt one of the bomb placements, then that kind of sucks. But we've got the placement now, and all we need to do is hold on to it, which we should have absolutely no issues with whatsoever. Not too worried about that. And smack that Jedi around, foolish enough to try and get in here. Just remember, if you're on the attack, the worst thing you can do is feed yourself to the enemy defense one at a time. If there's been a bomb placement, you might panic and try to go for it. Don't go for it on your own. You can't get it. If there's 4 or 5 guys hanging around the bomb, what exactly do you think you're going to accomplish? You can't defuse it. What you need to do is to actually engage them in open combat and then try and get someone in while that combat is going on. So get a few people together. And this is the worst place I could possibly be standing right now, and I have a feeling horrible things are about to happen. So I could break out of that, but you know what? I think I'm just going to be the sacrificial lamb and hold them for as long as I possibly can here, as there's no way I'm surviving this. So eat the flamethrower. There we go. Set everybody on fire, do some damage, prevent their regeneration, and delay them for a few seconds while my team is able to get in there. And now I respawn right above them. Unfortunately, I did screw up that AoE somewhat. But what I really should have done there is to lock an explosive dart onto the guy in the center. That would have made the most sense. But that delay has allowed our team to place the bomb. Always good to have a rear guard, because people are just kill crazy. So, oh, there's a guy, I can kill him. I'm going to spend many valuable seconds doing that. What matters on this map is making sure that you get the bomb placements and the diffusers in time. And of course, now we're not going to let that happen, because there's plenty of our guys here. Unleash a flamethrower, just set everybody on fire, and then just pick off the weaker guys at will. Jedi Shadow over there. We can rocket punch that guy to take him out as well. Stalk the Jedi Shadow around the corner. Prevent him from defusing that bomb over there. We wouldn't want any of that nonsense, would we? There we go, a few rockets here and there. Nice bit of close-range damage with a flame burst. And there's the rail shot to finish him off. And this area is completely held. There's no way they can defuse this in time. It's just not going to happen. So we should be able to get through that without any problem whatsoever, with the rest of our team just sitting over there. And it also gives us a bit of a head start, especially if you happen to have quite a lot of Sith that have the sprint ability. Because the first thing you can do right here is to sprint through to the next objective and start working on it before they're able to respond to it. And that's exactly what you should be saving your sprint for. If you've got a bomb placed on it and you happen to have the sprint ability as a Sith, save it for as soon as that door opens and then leg it to disable that force field as quickly as possible. The force field is designed to give the enemy team time to respawn. If you can shorten that time, that gives you the edge and you can get the positional advantage, which is very important. It also lets you grab these power-ups before the enemy can have them as well. So I've just got an expertise power-up there, so I'm going to be hitting a bit harder. And now we go into the defense on this door, which shouldn't be a problem. Now, that single shadow went in there with an AoE, which was actually a very smart thing to do in order to try and prevent the bomb placement, which they successfully did. That's exactly what you should be doing. If you're going to go in there alone and you're going to be the sacrificial lamb, then at least make sure that you've got an ability that will actually prevent a bomb placement. So an AoE knockback is ideal. Jedi Shadow has that. If you don't have that, you shouldn't be going in there, as far as I'm concerned. Alright, there we go. That's the placement successfully put down on both sides, and this really shouldn't be a problem to finish up here, as you can see. They're going to come in dribs and drabs, one after another, And at this point, once the bombs have been placed, if you're not going in there as a group, you might as well not go in there at all. You just free kills for the opposing team, and that's exactly what we're going to do to this guy here, who decided it would be a good idea to run into all of my attacks. There's a rocket punch to follow that one up, and we can easily flame boost them if need be, but it's already done, folks. There you go. A perfect run through the Voidstar. That's how to do it. There's a few basic tactics for you. Hopefully that should be useful. And we can have a little look at our damage if you so desire. It's fairly high. Not too bad, I say. 47 kills to 2 deaths. I think that's a reasonable ratio. I'll see you next time.